Hey, everybody, it's Adnan Burke from ESPN, and you're listening to two of my favorites, Graham and Chris, out of left field right now.
Hey, guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again. Hope everybody had a safe and really happy Thanksgiving from all of us here, as I put out on our Facebook page. We hope that you all had a happy Thanksgiving from us here at the show and everybody at the Grueling Truth Network. Been off for a couple of weeks on vacation. I was out of town up in North Carolina, had a blast up there. Chris is – well, he was working and going to school and doing the whole adulting thing. I got a nice little break from adulting, but we did not take a break from baseball. If you follow our social media page at OO Left Field on Twitter or Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, we had some really great interaction with you guys as the yearly awards came down with Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, Cy Young, and MVP. We will get to our reactions to those, your reactions to those as well here in a little bit coming down the pipe. Let's go ahead and put the ball in play on I guess really what our first full month almost into the off season, probably just a week or so away from hitting month one of the off season, and got one of our first big moves of really. The postseason, man, or the offseason, is that the Yankees have agreed to trade for a top pitching prospect, Justus Sheffield, to the Seattle Mariners for James Paxton. The big maple, of course, the big maple leaf on his forearm through the no-hitter last year for Seattle in Toronto, which was a huge, a huge deal for him emotionally and just career-wise. Man, this was a really big move for the Yankees. Early on, trying to go ahead and find that depth to their rotation, things that we know kind of caused them some issues later on into the year. It's a big deal for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to help the Yankees as far as, in my opinion, it's going to help the Yankees as far as going deeper in the playoffs. They are really looking at the holes that they need to fill this year, something I think that they didn't do last year effectively. Getting Giancarlo Stanton, while it's a big move, it didn't fill any of the needs that they really had. They have power. They have good outfielders. They didn't really need a Giancarlo Stanton, and it didn't help them go any deeper in the playoffs than they were capable of going without him. However, a James Paxton, a guy who can throw the way James Paxton does, assuming he can stay healthy, because that has been the overshadowing blip on his career, that he doesn't pitch a lot. In fact, 160 and a third innings last year is his career high. So assuming Paxton can stay healthy, I think this is the kind of move, maybe add a couple of more pieces to that rotation, and that's what really gets the Yankees deep into the postseason, if not all the way to the Fall Classic.
Well, and you're looking at a guy who's averaged 11 strikeouts per nine the last 2 years, 10.3 the year prior, 11.7 last year, and averaging 2.5 walks per 9 innings, which isn't bad. I mean, we see starters those numbers tend to usually be a little bit more inflated than relievers because they go at a longer clip and fatigue takes its toll more so on a starter than a reliever, which is that depends on how much the game will change. But what we have seen for him is his other metrics against him drop. Things like his hits per nine has gone down from 10 in 2016 to 7.5 hits per nine last year. Home runs up a little bit, just over 1 per 9 innings. But if there is something that helps him here, Safeco is at times, I think, kind of it tends to kind of wibble wobble, if you will, between hitters and team friendly. For the most part, Yankees Stadium is extremely pitcher friendly. So that number I would expect to see go down for him. And while he's only been in the big leagues since 2013. He was 24. The great thing for New York is that he's under control through at least he becomes arbitration eligible. Makes $9 million this year. He's in a really, really good spot for the Yankees, a team who we know doesn't mind spending a ton of cash and are able to go out here and get one of the biggest pitching names on the market who is likely going to be, looking for a new home in the next year or two. Get him for relatively inexpensive. I mean, with any prospect, you never know what's going to happen. And Justus Sheffield was a piece that was requested by a ton of teams for a while, and managed to make his way up into the big club last year. In 3 games, had a 10.13 ERA. Only went in 2 2/3 innings. Gave up 3 earned runs on 4 hits. But I mean, come on, the kid's 22 years old. He'll be 23, and has obviously been their top prospect in the minors for quite a while now.
Right, and one of the good things about picking up a lefty, especially a strong lefty, is they're going to play a bunch of times in Boston this next year, as they do every year, right? They're going to play probably 20 games in Boston. And having that short right field porch in Boston isn't going to hurt a guy like James Paxton, because he doesn't allow left-handed hitters to pull the ball.
Right.
Which is important, because the right-handed hitters who do tend to pull the ball against them have that big wall, the green monster out in left field to contend with.
Oh, that thing, yeah.
Yeah, the thing. It also doesn't hurt him. I mean, right field isn't exactly a huge distance to the wall in New York either. So he'll have some help there. I'm excited to see what the Mariners do with this pitching prospect. One of the things that bothers me.
I mean, if he's a top prospect, the idea is he's going to be the one to hopefully move, really help the transition between King Felix and bring in a new face who can kind of galvanize that city and that ball club.
Right, and the question for me then becomes, if this is the person who is capable of doing that, right? If this prospect is capable of being the guy to ease that transition, what it's gonna do is it's gonna tell me that the Mariners are finally on board with being able to manage their farm system, because that's been a huge problem for them forever. I mean, they've always had problems managing their farm system in a way that allows them to be successful. So,
well, when you think of the last big names to come out of there, it feels like it was Griffey and A-Rod, and that was a lifetime ago. I mean, for most of us now, for most guys our age now, those were the kids, the guys we watched when we were kids. They were kind of our heroes, and now they're retired pieces that are legends. That's the last kind of big in-your-face piece to come out of the farm system, it seems.
Right, and the problem is Griffey stayed there for a long time, but A-Rod was gone as soon as they couldn't control him anymore, and he went on to have obviously a monster career, but it'll be interesting to see if Sheffield can do what everybody's hoping he's going to do, because you got to think that Felix is on his way out. I can't imagine a guy like Felix, who went to the bullpen late in the season last year.
I can't imagine they put him back in the rotation.
Right. Which is going to be hard for him. It's going to be difficult for him. I was trying to think of a better adjective, but that's the long and the short of it is it's going to be hard for him to deal with coming out of the bullpen. He'll be a long reliever type, right? He'll be a good middle reliever, but how often is he going to get used? I mean, assuming this Sheffield kid can pitch in the majors the way he pitched last year in the minors, I gotta imagine that he's not going to see a whole lot of playing time.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Sheffield, this is he got his first taste of big league action. I don't know that he's big league ready yet. And I don't think he's going to be. He's not a face we're going to see start next year. He's a face you're going to see in spring training and camp, and they're going to get a feel for really what he has, and he's going to work with a new pitching coach, new system, and that can be the best thing sometimes, for a team, and it has to make you at least raise an eyebrow. I think if a guy like this, who is touted as much as he has been, with a team that has needed starting pitching as much as the Yankees have needed it, that they are so quick to go ahead and move on from him and go get Paxton, who we know had an injury this year but still pitched very, very well and has done the last couple of years. Granted, it's always easier to go ahead and grab a guy who you've had a chance to see produce positively at the major league level compared to a guy who you hope will produce positively at the major league level. But
he did throw a no-hitter, so I would say maybe he pitched.
Yeah,
he pitched okay.
He pitched all right. But I think it has to at least make you kind of go, okay, what are they seeing? What were they unable to rectify? What were their goals with this kid? And either did they gain towards achieving that goal, or did it kind of come to a standstill, and that's where they move on? That's not something you're going to know as a GM, but so you also have to know Paxton wasn't going to resign in Seattle, and you try and get something great you can while you still have Paxton under team control.
So here's my question, and it's the obvious question to me. Maybe you don't think it's as obvious of a question because of the difference in the amount of time they've been in the league, and of course their accomplishments in the league. But when you look at 6'4", 30-year-old left-handers who are imposing pitchers, have the ability to dominate, the other name that comes to mind is Madison Bumgarner. The guys have similar pitching styles. They have similar ability to dominate. Paxton obviously throws a lot harder.
Sure.
Like 6 or 7 miles an hour harder. I think Paxton was hitting 99 even into the ninth inning of his, or 97 even into the ninth inning of his no-hitter.
Right.
In fact, wasn't that last strikeout like 3 consecutive high 90s pitches, and one of them was even like 99 or something like that, or maybe even triple digit?
I think something like that.
I think he hit 100 on one of those 3 pitches. But obviously Madison Bumgarner is never going to throw 100 miles an hour, but he's got that strong slider that he can depend on.
Arm angle.
And he's got that wicked arm angle, that weird sort of high 3/4 delivery that he has. Does watching a pitcher have a successful year in which he has a no-hitter, right? Obviously, Madison Bumgarner didn't see that kind of success last year because of the injury that kept him out until June.
Right.
But even after coming back from that injury to his pitching hand, had a 3.26 ERA, which is respectable, and threw 130 innings, 129 2/3, and had similar numbers to Paxton. Is this a precedent for the Giants to go ahead and say, okay, maybe we should entertain offers for Madison Bumgarner?
If they're a team that is really worth their salt, they should have already been doing that. We've seen the last 2 or 3 years have looked exponentially just horrific. We watched
the last 2 years. Well,
15 they were okay, but we kind of all thought, okay, 15's it was normally the odd year was kind of their retool year, and every even year seemed to be the year of, okay, where are the Giants going to make their move? And obviously you had the dirt bike accident, which it's an accident, but it also kind of makes you, I think, has to frustrate you as a fan, as a man, as a front office piece in that clubhouse, that this guy's more interested in goofing off and being stupid and potentially running the risk of injury, which came to fruition, than being locked in on this team, and it kept him out for 3 or 4 months. And then this past year was more of a freak accident, not his fault. But if the Giants tried to get older, not younger, this year to be competitive, and it epically failed. And to me, we're at a point now where the Giants are kind of at that apex of, okay, we hit the top, we won 3 out of 5, and you have some great pieces, but we've seen pitching consistently be that problem, and they're not getting better. This is one of those moments where you got to see what Bumgarner does this year. You have to see what the pieces around him do. Can you move a piece that is not him and get something positive back? If you can, and he's productive, you keep him. But, and we talked about this, he has pitched almost 1,000, I think over 1,000 more innings than James Paxton. So while they're roughly the same age, there is a lot less mileage on the arm and elbow of James Paxton as there is to Madison Bumgarner. Bumgarner's best days are likely behind him, as are guys like Clayton Kershaw, who you and I have talked about probably ad nauseum on the show for a good chunk. So I think they should have already been looking to move Madison Bumgarner and get something positive back in return. Right now, you're probably not going to have that because of the injuries the last 2 years. There needs to be very solid production, and if there is solid production and yet no division-level competition, then, yeah, you have to begin to look at moving that piece. To me, the only guy in that clubhouse who should be, an orange and black guy for life is Buster Posey. And I love what Bumgarner has done, but Posey is that selfless guy who just goes out there and does his job. And Bumgarner, we've seen some selfish moments have led to him hurting the team in ways it shouldn't have happened.
I agree. I think that you have to entertain offers for Madison Bumgarner in order to stay competitive. Now, Madison Bumgarner hasn't really pitched 1,000 innings more. When you take into, well, I guess maybe he has. If you take into consideration his entire career, including, you realize Paxton played a lot of independent ball. He played a lot of fall ball. He played a lot of different leagues that Madison Bumgarner didn't play in. Played a lot of minor league ball too, because he keeps getting hurt and having to do rehab starts down in the minor leagues. Sometimes as far down as AA. Before he can make it back. He did so in 2017, played in 2016, he played in AAA Tacoma. 2017, he played in AA Arkansas. Because he has spent so much time hurt. So I agree that, yes, you have to think that maybe Paxton has less time on the arm, but Paxton doesn't have any more of an ability to stay healthy than any other pitcher on that rotation. And Madison Bumgarner, although he has been hurt the last 2 seasons, both of those things were outside of his control. These aren't injuries that are caused by the use of his arm, right? He's not getting Tommy John. He's not having shoulder issues. His shoulder separation came from a bike crash. His hand is broken because of a comebacker. These are not things that are problems with his function, right? James Paxton is the other way. James Paxton's injuries are repetitive use injuries, things that he can't physically go the number of innings that Madison Bumgarner can.
Sure.
And I think that still holds true. And if you look at 2016, Madison Bumgarner's last full season, he had a career high, 34 games. He pitched remarkably better than he did in 14 or 15, both good years for him. 14, he finished 4th in the Cy Young. 16, he finished 4th in the Cy Young. 2.75 ERA. I think with a full season and a full spring training and no injury, no outside injury, Madison Bumgarner gets back there, and James Paxton doesn't.
And I'll say this before we move on. That is why the Yankees' move for Paxton works out so well, because they have a bullpen that should be able to effectively eat up a good chunk of the innings when he pitches if necessary. So
I don't want to talk about that.
You don't have to overuse him.
I don't want to talk about that.
No, I understand. But my point is that, to what you're saying is that, yes, that is the biggest kind of That's the biggest chink in the armor that Paxton has. It is his biggest weakness for a ball club, and he's going to a club that should be able to pick him up on that side, and make that link just a little bit stronger.
So on the other, do you think that Noah Syndergaard is going to go to a club that's going to be able to pick him up? Because it looks like the Mets want to get rid of him.
So that came out from John Heyman, I think early this past week, that the Mets are seriously considering trading Noah Syndergaard, which is odd enough because the new GM was his former agent. And, right now I think the question is, okay, you had all throughout the last month and a half, 2 months of the season when you guys were in the tank to try and find someone, especially at the deadline, and nobody bit. So what is it now that a new GM is are you trying to really ascertain what else is there? Because if this guy, this Van Wagenen, was his agent, he should already know what the initial rate and desire was for a guy like his client. Do I think this is a bad move? I hate to say it, but I don't know, man. Not really. I love what Syndergaard does, but we have seen the blister issues, right? We've seen the fingernail thing where his fingernail keeps splitting. We've seen some injury. We've seen him not be totally honest about what he's feeling with his body, a la Matt Harvey, who is no longer with this ball club. I understand, I think, better than people may want to, why they would look at this move. And there are so many glaring holes in this ball club. What's the use? You keep him to draw a crowd in, but you're going to lose him. You can't re-sign him and DeGrom, nor do I think they want to, and nor do I think that it's a good move to make because you have nothing around them. Obviously, you can't give him run support, can they, Jacob DeGrom?
Right, exactly. And the thing about Noah Syndergaard and his injury woes that really worries me is we've already seen him say, I'm okay, and then have that serious shoulder issue.
Right, or tore the lat muscle too.
Right. And then he seems sort of lost about what to do about the fingernail issue, right? He said, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. If I cut them too short, I get blisters. If I leave them too long, they split. I don't know how to fix it. And then he didn't have the greatest of years the last couple of years when we really thought that he was going to sort of come into his own after 2016. Obviously his best outing as a professional pitcher, when he had that 2.6 ERA, won 14 games, and finished 8th in the Cy Young voting. He comes back the next year, has the lat muscle issue, goes out most of the season, only starts 7 games. Last year, again, starts 25 games, doesn't really do exactly what we expected him to do, has a higher ERA than we really like to see from a guy like Noah Syndergaard. And most
54 in the third innings, a 3.03 ERA at 26 years old. With these kind of injuries,
right? And a 1.212 ERA, or excuse me, WHIP, which is what really worries me. His strikeouts to walks is pretty good at almost 4, right where you want to see him there. But the guy has given up way too many hits per 9, almost 9 hits per 9 innings. He's just not the kind of pitcher that the Mets can afford to have.
And with a whip like that, when you don't have a team that is giving you offensive run production or to back you up, you put yourself in a really rough spot as it is. The thing that's going to help him here, if he's got 2 more years of club control, probably going to make roughly $6 million in arbitration. These injuries, albeit obviously terrible for him, make it kind of nice for a team that wants to make a move for him because they're able to at least argue that, hey, his value is there, but we've also seen issues where he doesn't keep himself healthy and doesn't effectively communicate with the staff. We're taking a flyer on him, but we also want to be compensated, and keep ourselves, safe from that as well. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to do. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Mets to at least try and find something. And if they do and they choose to pull the trigger, Brodie Van Wagenen might be one of the most hated people in New York early. But, to see that he has the guts to pull off a move like that this early into his tenure, and if we actually begin to see, if he gets a good haul back and we see the Mets begin to take shape of, it's going to be rough, and we got to find out if Mickey Callaway is the right guy to go ahead and move this forward. But, there's a possibility here that if he has the guts to do this and gets the right pieces back for it, that all of a sudden we begin to change our tune on what the Mets and that ownership group did when they hired this guy.
You know what makes a scary amount of sense to me?
Me?
No. Almost never. You're almost always nonsensical. But what makes a scary amount of sense to me is for the Astros to make a move on Noah Syndergaard, because he can go into that clubhouse, the number 4 or number 5 guy in that rotation, almost no pressure on him. And if he wins,
with Keuchel likely leaving, you could pretty easily put him in at number 3, behind Verlander and Cole, and then you have like McCullers and somebody else to round it
out. Even at number 3, with very little pressure on him in that number 3 slot, if he can win 13 or 14 games for them, that's scary. And they make a lot of
Justin Verlander grow his hair out like Cole and
No, I don't think Justin Verlander. I don't think Justin's wife is going to allow that. I think
congrats
she likes
to them, by the way. They had I think a daughter recently, last month or two. Could have been the last month we were off, but congrats to them as well. It'll be interesting. I mean, that would be scary. That'd be one of those. Okay, I think we hit the fast forward button. Go. Can we just go to an ALCS with the Red Sox and the Astros and just watch?
Even a Cubs trade makes some sense. With an aging rotation, I think a young Noah Syndergaard makes sense. It makes less sense than the Astros, but it makes a bit of sense for the Cubs because they probably wouldn't have to mortgage the farm to get him.
Well, I mean, what Van Wagenen is saying he wants back is young talent. I mean, he is looking for, I think, a larger haul of prospects. So probably looking for 5 or 6, mid to lower level prospects to try and find that diamond in the rough.
Right, but the Cubbies can afford that because they're such a young team.
Can they?
Well,
you got to think who the amount they gave up, like a Gleyber Torres, because they wanted to win a World Series in 2016, and they give up guys to get Aroldis Chapman and guys, and other pieces like that. So no, I mean they made moves, but they also gave up a pretty good chunk to get some of those pieces.
But the average age of their infielder is like 25.
It depends. We got to see if my boy Daniel Murphy makes me look good, goes ahead and stays there as the starting second baseman, and they move on to Madison Russell.
Even a 30-year-old Daniel Murphy makes the average age of their infielder 26. Because, a couple of those guys are babies, man.
Sure.
Bryant's a young kid. Baez is a young kid. What is he, 24? I mean, these are young guys, man. And I don't think Baez or Bryant are going anywhere. I mean, I didn't think Addison Russell was going anywhere either, but we saw how that worked out.
Well, I can tell you who's not young anymore. That's guys like Joe Mauer and Adrian Beltre, 2 of the top players at their position, at least at one time, have officially gone ahead and called it a career, have chosen to retire. Joe Mauer retired about 2 weeks ago, I think not long after I got up to North Carolina, and I saw that come back around. Finished out the final year of his 8-year deal, went ahead and, what a story that kid was, right? Born in the Minneapolis, St. Paul era, and then ends up, having a chance to get drafted by the hometown team, makes it, wins the MVP. Just a guy that unfortunately never managed to get himself a ring, but was on a number of pretty doggone doggone good Twinkies teams in the late 2000s. And but yeah, I mean, comes in 04, wins MVP in 2009. MVP, finished 4th, 6th, and 8th in the voting as well. I mean, just was a 6-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger. It's gonna be a different looking team without that leadership there. It was crazy seeing him. Buzz cut was still there. The gray hair though on the temples. He looked a lot different than that 19, 20-year-old kid that they picked up early on, just after the turn of the century.
One of the interesting things for me, I mean, I grew up watching Joe Mauer and Adrian Beltre. I was an adult already, but I feel like I grew up watching these guys. Sometimes it's hard to separate my late teens from my early teens. But definitely Adrian Beltre. I was 15 when he came into the league, and 20 years ago. And Joe Mauer. The interesting thing for me is Adrian Beltre is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Agreed.
I think we've established that. 3,000 hits, nearly 500 home runs. He's going to the Hall. Joe Mauer, though, I have questions about. Do I think he's the caliber player that goes to the Hall of Fame? Yeah. The guy has a career batting average over 300, a career OBP near 4, and a career OPS of 827. I think those are the kind of numbers you like to see, but 143 career home runs is going to hurt him. 2,100 career hits is going to hurt him in 15 years. You'd like to see those numbers pumped up a little bit for a guy who's going to go early in the voting. I'm not saying that Joe Mauer's not going to go to the Hall of Fame.
Sure. But
he's going to be a 5th or 6th ballot Hall of Famer.
That's right. I think 3rd or 4th, because he was classy, man. Played the game the right way. I mean, when he was at his apex, he was fantastic. And concussions obviously kind of changed things for him. He went from being a catcher to being, I think even moved to the outfield for a time. Played a good chunk of the end of his career at first base. Yeah, you saw him in the out. They tried him at the outfield a couple times, but first base. I mean, he played 8 seasons at first, and 11 seasons behind. 11 split time out of his 15 with 8 different seasons where he played first and 11 where he caught. And I just, man, at the end of it, I mean, heck, the guy had a 995 fielding percentage as a catcher, 30 career errors as a catcher, had almost 20 as a first baseman. I mean, just how good he was, behind there. Had a caught stealing percentage of 33%, caught 181 base stealers out of I think 364. I mean, it's I don't know, man. And at the end of the day, I don't think that there's not a whole lot that he couldn't have done.
I mean, I agree. And he was a classy guy. But Adrian Beltre was a classy guy. Adrian Beltre has the numbers.
Sure.
But Fred McGriff was a classy guy. He did everything right. He played the game the right way. But he has the misfortune of being associated with this era in baseball. The same, by the way, era that Adrian Beltre should be associated with. He came in the league in the late 90s, before this all really hit the fan, and had some big seasons.
And we are not in any way saying
no. I would never insinuate that Adrian Beltre was involved in any way. But if Fred McGriff, who's a classy guy, is on his sixth ballot now, or 7th? So. Is this his last year? And can't manage to crack 30% of the vote. I have worries about Joe Mauer and his 143 home runs and his 2,100.
Sure. Well, he had a career offensive WAR mounted of 53, a defensive WAR of 2.9. But just to put that in perspective, Adrian Beltre has a career offensive WAR of 71.6 and a defensive WAR of 29.3.
Right. And there are years in Adrian Beltre's career when his WAR was almost 10. In a single year, he was worth 10 games by himself.
Yeah.
That's not
offensively 7.4, 6, 5.5. I mean, he
only 1 year, only his MVP season did Joe Mauer even approach those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely was. It was. I mean, it was a great career by both guys. Hats off to them for being able to walk out where they wanted to. I would have loved to see Beltre move on if he wanted to and go somewhere and have a chance to go ahead and find himself, a ring again. But Mauer, you could see
Mauer's one of those guys. He's from Minnesota, or he's from the area. He's from Minneapolis. It's his hometown team. He got an opportunity to play there, and he played well. And he probably had the opportunity to move on from that team and go somewhere else, and maybe even find a ring, and chose not to.
Right.
And there's a lot about that needs to be commended.
Right.
For him to stay with the Minnesota Twins because he loves that team, because he loves that city, is something that I think is highly commendable. Is it going to hurt him when it comes to Hall of Fame voting? Maybe, but
I don't think he'd change it, man. Honestly, I mean, I'm sure he had the option to change it. Yeah,
I don't think he should.
It's something that we don't see very often anymore. I
wish is not that Joe Mauer would have gone somewhere and found himself a ring. I wish some of those really great Minnesota Twins teams would have been able to get over the hump.
Right. And I think what really kind of hurt for him is that as they were great, the Tigers were also great, right? And that's when Verlander was there, and Scherzer became Scherzer, and Prince Fielder and Miguel Cabrera. I mean, all these guys are crap. I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw when Central was really good.
That 2009 MVP year,
365.
Yeah. But the Detroit Lions, man, Prince Fielder and Justin Verlander and.
Yeah,
what are you gonna do?
The Detroit Lions play at Ford Field.
I'm sorry, Detroit. You know what I meant. The Detroit Tigers. They're both big cats.
Oh my! Only because the Bears play in Chicago.
The Bears, unfortunately, don't play in Detroit. But yeah, I think Joe Mauer had a great career. I think not only would he not trade it for anything, I think he shouldn't ever be in that mindset. I think that the Twins are going to be this is going to be something that makes the Twins stop and say, we were a better team with him.
Sure. And I'm sure he'll have
do you think Adrian Beltre coaches eventually?
Probably. I think so. I don't think right away. I think he'll be an advisor for spring training. I think he'll be there for spring training for the club and be around the guys. I just don't think there's a point now where he can coach those guys because they have the goofiness of rubbing his head, and he was kind of just he was the grandfather of the team, but that's I think as you and I could both say from looking at leadership and such things as I think we look at it still from our time with Sergeant, now Captain Resto, and Sergeant Wall and Sergeant Witherspoon for Sergeant Taylor. I don't think he could effectively lead that team because I don't think either one of them could effectively change the dynamic that fast. And that's okay. Right. That's not a bad thing on either one. I just don't think it's a time where he can go in there as a voice of learning and a voice of instruction, but not as a voice of management yet. I'd like to see him
come on as a hitting instructor. Especially even if he's going to do the spring training thing, to come in as a hitting instructor for spring training, very similar to what Barry Bonds did or does for the San Francisco Giants, even though I hate him. very similar to what Bonds does for the Giants now and has done for the last several years as a spring training hitting consultant. I would like to see Adrian Beltre do that for a while until he can go somewhere, maybe not the Rangers, but until he can go somewhere as maybe a bench coach.
Sure.
And accomplish something in his late life as a coach.
Yeah. All right. So now it's the time where we get to talk about where we were right, where I think for a good chunk we were kind of wrong. And some of it, honestly, I think we pushed. And we'll discuss that. Okay. I say we pushed because I don't want to say we were completely wrong, but damn it. We had a couple of moments on here where we were really feeling good. And then all of a sudden we look and it's, that's not what we picked. So let's go ahead. We'll start it off at the Rookie of the Year voting. Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Atlanta Braves and Shohei Ohtani of the Los Angeles Angels are the 2018 Rookies of the Year. We both picked Acuna Jr. and Miguel Andujar of the Yankees. Man, I was really surprised at this, and we've got, we had some different takes from different guys, different listeners who chimed in and whatnot, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But I was really surprised that Ohtani was given so much love over 10 games pitching. Yeah, he batted a bunch, but he just hit. We give it to guys who were Rookies of the Year because they play both sides of the, in the game, and he didn't get a chance to pitch enough in my mind to make this worth it.
No, I completely agree. I think that this was just not a good choice. Just flat out not a good choice. I'm not even really sure where Shohei Ohtani came from here, because when we started looking at who we thought could possibly finish in the top 3, at least for Rookie of the Year, I don't think Shohei Ohtani entered into either of our minds during that conversation, for the simple fact that he only played 104 games total and only really suited up and put a glove on his hand 10 times.
Right.
And in my opinion, that is not a big enough sample size for Rookie of the Year. It just isn't. And, if they would have decided instead of DHing him to play him and say left or right field, or move him around with Trout in the outfield or something and allow him to play the game on his days, on those 4 days when he would DH and then take a day off and then pitch and then take a day off and then play 4 days. If he was allowed to play the field instead of just DH, I think maybe I could have been more comfortable with this.
Sure.
So I would have gotten to see what he can do.
And the interesting, and a couple of things here. First off, Greg Pascal, thank you. You say Acuna and Andujar should have been right. We agree. We tried. Okay, we only get so much here, but thank you for going ahead and at least making us feel good about what we claim we think we know about baseball. Frank Scaduto said Ohtani's is a farewell award. He might be done. That was a really interesting take for me, because we've said that, and there is, with this injury to him, there is no guarantee. I think we both think with the youth that Ohtani can come back and still be effective, but I'm not saying he's absolutely right, but I think it is a very good statement to make until we get a chance to see what he can come back and do. Leopold Stotch, Ohtani pitched 10 games against the worst teams in baseball, and for that he's Rookie of the Year. Didn't play a meaningful game all season. He also disagrees with the Ohtani pick, and those are just some of the ones we found, mainly because they agree with us, but also gave us a little bit with it. He didn't. I asked him to give us who he would have picked. He didn't. I didn't get a response on that, but we do appreciate at least you guys reaching out and talking to us on Facebook with our @OO Left Field on Twitter as well, and @Left Field with Chris and Graham, our Facebook page. Moving on to the next one, man. This one is where I say we pushed, because I said if I had to pick, that I picked Kevin Cash and I picked Craig Counsell. And I thought that either way, both of these awards for Manager of the Year could have been split. I thought that we could have had either Kevin Cash or Bob Melvin and either Brian Snitker or Craig Counsell, and each made sense. And I just went ahead and pulled the ones that I thought were the best. And for me, it was Cash because of the number of games or the division he was in. And it was Counsell because they ended up finally getting in there and winning, and winning their division. I think now, if I remember on this, I believe, as I had to go back through and listen to the show because we foolishly didn't write these down. I missed on both. You actually chose Brian Snitker, but also chose Kevin Cash. So you went 1 for 2, which 500 is a Hall of Fame, type career. I mean, hey, again, I'm still okay with my picks, but you're the one that got one right.
I am at this point 500 all the way through, so I'm comfortable with that. I think Brian Snitker definitely, as a National League Manager of the Year, deserved it just because of what he was capable of doing, what he did with those Atlanta Braves. But you're right, Counsell was an equally good choice, and I think that a lot of it just came down to the fact that nobody expected the East to do anything. And that included the Braves, and the Braves did end up doing something that I think nobody expected them to do against some teams that were better than them outside of their own division. And I think we expected everyone expected that division to be run by the Washington Nationals. And not only was it not run by the Washington Nationals, but the Braves beat the Nationals handily. So
it wasn't really handled by anybody until damn near the last couple of weeks of the season,
right?
Really until the Phillies began to drop off, and we thought for at least at the halfway point, I think you and I had, I think one of us had Gabe Kapler and one of us had Brian Snitker as the halfway managers of the year,
right? And as far as Bob Melvin moneyballed us, is what he did, right? He won his second Manager of the Year with the Oakland Athletics by making a team that has consistently had the lowest payroll in the league competitive. And not just competitive, but frightening at points. I mean, there were times when I thought not only are the A's going to do this, but the A's came within a hair's breadth of taking that division. A couple of games go a different way, and the Astros are playing from the wild card spot, which is, it kind of makes you shake your head and go, what?
Yeah.
But I think that's what it was they're as close as they got to taking that division. Now, again, Cash did something with the Rays that not only did we not expect, but that was downright surprising. And in every other division in the league, that Rays is not just a competitive team, they're possibly a winning team and almost a wild card team, even as it was.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean,
again,
that's the thing with me with the Rays is because 90 plus wins, and they were selling off pieces, right? I mean, they moved Longoria to get Denard Span and Christian Arroyo from the Giants. They moved Span later over to the Mariners. I mean, things were constantly going there. Obviously, they had Blake Snell, who we'll touch on here in just a second. But I mean, none of us expected, even with a 20 win guy like Snell, for the Rays to be competitive, and they were the only team to sweep the Red Sox on the road this year, and went on a huge tear at home. I think just into August. Steve Teixeira, in response to one of our posts, where we had one of the guys saying that Cora was robbed, and I didn't think Cora was robbed. I don't think Cora really deserved it because he had pieces around him, and I love what Steve said here. Steve said he was given a team of great players. Sure, he has to make some decisions, but when you have a team that produces like them, anyone probably could have done that. If anyone got robbed, it was Kevin Cash. Took a team that was projected to lose 90 games, instead won 90 games. That's a young team, and the AL East is going to be competitive for the next few years. Steve, I think you're right on the money there because Cora walked into a great situation, had Mookie Betts have a standout year. JD Martinez came in and was a great piece to kind of help back him up and to he was kind of that protective piece, and we'll discuss that in a couple of minutes as well. But I think Steve is dead on here. And mind you, again, I'm okay with either of these guys getting picked, either Melvin or Cash or Snitker or Craig Counsell. This was kind of cool. Christian Stein said this. I actually was listening in Germany. He said the postseason is irrelevant because the votes are made before. Someone was saying that because Cora won the World Series. He said, when you look at the regular season, you have to find out that Cora didn't have to process long-term injuries. They would have hurt because the Red Sox farm system could basically be empty and have little depth. They didn't have the best farm system at the time. Also, the Red Sox went to Toronto and Baltimore 38 times, right? I mean, because of this unbalanced scheduling. I don't want to belittle Cora's performance, but the Red Sox weren't exceptionally spectacular in the regular season. Melvin, on the other hand, has a lot of improvisation with the rotation and things they did, and the cheapest squad, and led them to 97 victories. I think that's quite respectable. Christian, the only thing I would say, I think that the Red Sox were spectacular, but they were spectacular as a team, and I don't think Cora did a ton to, he kind of was out there and you could kind of let things happen as they were. So, again, congrats to all the recipients, but that is where I stand, at least on that one. I may have swung and missed 0 for 2 based off of what the awards came down as, but, I'm okay with the picks as I had them because, I just didn't want to give a tie to both races because I thought it easily could have been.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I think that the idea that Cora got robbed is just it's lazy. It's lazy fanship. It's lazy inspection of the numbers because Cora, you hand that team to me, and I'm probably going to get to the World Series with that team.
Right. It's. I mean, they were very much like the Chicago Bulls, right, of the 90s. So,
right.
Now,
what about Mookie Betts?
Well, let's get there. Let's do the Cy Young first, and then we'll get to the MVP. Let's go in the race.
You want to do the Cy Young first? I just don't think that there's really any. You have an issue with the MVP voting, personally. You do. I don't think that there's really any controversy in the MVP because the two guys who won are the guys who were supposed to win. I don't give a crap who came in second and third.
Well, yeah, my issue is that they put Jose Ramirez in over JD Martinez. My issue isn't being wrong. My issue is that I think that JD Martinez was markedly better than Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Indians and deserved to be there. So, okay, let's go there.
I agree. I agree.
So Betts and Yelich win. I go 1 for 2. And granted, okay, I took a flyer there. Did I really expect JD to win? No. But the cool thing is, Jim Charbonneau agrees with me and says JD should have been a finalist. The downside to that is he might have split the votes and allowed Trout to sneak in as the winner. Jim, you know what? That is probably one of the best descriptions I think I got from this that made sense to go ahead and have 3 different guys from 3 different teams. As much as it pains me that one was left out, they did put the better of the 2 from that team in, and I'm okay. I think it's a great point by Jim, and I appreciate that.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that the baseball writers decided not to put JD Martinez in because he was a Red Sox? If JD Martinez had that season on any other American League team,
I firmly believe he would have been in the voting. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, come on, man. We're talking over 40 dingers, 130 runs batted in, and a batting average over 330. I mean, Jose Ramirez was not nearly as effective in that as JD was, and that to me was that's the only reason I could logically I didn't say it. That's the only logical reason I think Jim comes up with, and I think it's spot on. I think Jim is really makes a great point on that.
Well, and look at it this way: when you're talking about the most valuable player, you're talking about the most valuable player to their team. And if Mookie Betts is a finalist for most valuable player to the Boston Red Sox, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say that there are 2 most valuable players on a single team. Because either Betts is or he isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, you're looking at who is the MVP of the entire, who is the who was the best player, the most valuable player to a team in the league. And I think at some point, though, you could look at this and say, well, I think Betts could be. I think Martinez – and that was the kind of the argument we made is, hey, I thought that both guys pushed the other one forward. I think each guy made the other better and helped improve each number. So that was my biggest argument. And I'm okay with being wrong on that one. I don't mind that. I just don't like that they left JD completely off the final three. That just kind of irks me a little bit.
One thing I will say about the MVP race this year that I'm excited about is they didn't make it a home run derby. Right. Even though, I mean, Mookie Betts did hit 32 home runs. That's not shabby. But they didn't make it a home run derby by putting JD in because he had the highest home run total. They didn't make it about which team had the best win-loss record. Even though Mookie Betts won, Mookie Betts was legitimately the best player in the league.
Sure.
Regardless of the fact
I think your home run derby piece was Jose Ramirez, who hit – I mean,
right.
He hit 39 home runs and 105 RBI and had a batting average of 270. And again, that was my gripe.
And so, in my opinion, Jose Ramirez is the Shohei Ohtani choice of the MVP voting. He's the guy that you look at and you go, "Oh, I don't see a clear reason why he's here."
Yeah, he was. Yeah, JD shows as being fourth. And I'll run out here. The top five is Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Jose Ramirez, JD Martinez, Alex Bregman.
Do you think being a designated hitter hurt JD Martinez? It's interesting. If it hurt JD Martinez but didn't hurt Shohei Ohtani, I'm going to be a little upset.
Well, but at the same time, he was also if you look, I mean, he played only 57. He played 57 games in the field, which is more than Ohtani played.
Yeah, he also played a whole season. Had Ohtani played a whole season, he would have pitched 30 games. So it would have only ended up being a 26-game swing.
You know, I mean, maybe it did. I mean, you know, maybe that is
frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that is the big difference. Which, if it is, my Dad would say, well, good riddance, because he doesn't need to, he doesn't need to, doesn't need to be a candidate there anyway. Then if that's what he's doing, but
right.
But yeah, man, I mean, I don't know.
That's frustrating that Ohtani can win the Rookie of the Year, DHing all but 10 games, and JD Martinez doesn't get to be a finalist, probably because he DH'd all but 50 games. And what frustrates me about that is putting him in the field for 162 games, JD Martinez is going to be a liability.
Sure. Well, here's what I'll tell you. This year alone, out of the 6 total that he's played, Jose Ramirez comprised 25% of his career error total this year. 14 combined errors this year.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Out of 49 total.
That's not valuable at all.
So I'll leave it there. But again,
I agree.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
That's frustrating. It's frustrating because you feel now when you read something like that, you feel like he got the nod because he played in the field. Yep. And that frustrates me because Shohei Ohtani got a nod without playing in the field.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So here comes the fun one then, since you wanted to hold off. So Blake Snell, or hold on, let me stop. Christian Yelich, well done, man.
I'm sorry, Christian Yelich.
I'm sorry. No, because
you were the clear cut candidate, in my opinion.
He had a great.
If Acuna Jr. wasn't going to win both the Rookie of the Year and the MVP, I think Christian Yelich was the clear cut candidate.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel won a triple crown. Gets a chance to go from a dumpster fire to Milwaukee. He goes pretty much from Miami to to beer heaven. Had a fantastic year with Lorenzo Cain. Braun still looks good regardless of what you think of because of his past, but that was a really, really good team. And they have I think they're going to be a team that holds on for time, still for time to come. But yeah, I hate to glance over him, but he is the piece that we expected that from him. So it's hard to kind of sit here and plan.
Well, there are people who say that Christian Yelich shouldn't have won, that there was a robbery going on, and that there were other players more deserving. And I honestly just don't see it, because despite what you're gonna have to help me with his name.
I don't know where you're going. So
the other MVP candidate for the National League.
Arenado?
Yeah,
just from Colorado?
Right. Despite what Arenado was capable of doing, when you look at a guy who nearly wins the Triple Crown, you can't say, maybe he shouldn't win the MVP. The guy won a batting title. He won the Triple Crown, almost won a Triple Crown. Was there a guy who hit more home runs? Sure. Was there
and we'll go ahead and we're going to lay that, and we'll lay this out. We'll lay all of them out. But so Yelich, MVP was Christian Yelich, Javi Baez, Nolan Arenado, Freddie Freeman, and number 5. Take a guess at number 5.
Acuna?
Jacob deGrom.
No way.
Yes, sir.
A pitcher?
5th. Finished 5th ahead of Paul Gold.
I thought we were done with that.
Nope. Acuna finished 12th. Yep. DeGrom finished 5th.
Wow. I honestly thought that when Kershaw won the MVP, I thought we were done with pitchers winning the MVP at that point.
But speaking of having guys on the same team, in the Rookie of the Year, Ohtani was first, but Andujar and Gleyber Torres finished second and third, both Yankees. And then, of course, Acuna, Juan Soto, Walker Buehler, Brian Anderson, Jack Flaherty, Rookie of the Year, and then that will take us into.
But I think it was Baez. I think it was Baez that that they said was robbed, because Baez hit, I think, more home runs. I think Baez is the reason why he didn't win the Triple Crown.
Yeah, Baez hit. Baez had one more run batted in. He had
one more RBI. Right.
Compared to 110 for Yelich. Yelich had 36 dingers. Baez had 34.
34, yeah.
And Yelich had 187 hits compared to 176 for Baez. And Yelich's batting average was almost 36. It was 36 points better than Javier Baez. So let's go on to the all right.
This is where I say, again, you're getting lazy when you look at the numbers, because if you say that the 111 RBI and the 34 home runs, having one more RBI should have been the deciding factor between the two, I feel like you're getting lazy, because Javi Baez's on-base percentage was abysmal, 326.
326. His on-base was the same as Yelich's batting average.
Right. His slugging, or his OPS at 881 is nearly 0.02 of a point below, or 0.2 of a point below Yelich's at 1.
He was 119 below Yelich.
So I feel like you're getting lazy looking at the numbers when you say Baez should have won based on the RBI totals. And we had a couple of people comment that Baez got robbed, and I just don't see how you can make that argument.
And these numbers are with Baez playing 160 games. Yelich played 147. And mind you, Yelich's WAR was 7.6, Baez is 6.3. Those that want to get into the advanced metrics. So it was certainly there. All right, now let's go ahead and make the move. I thought I had this one good to go. I was all excited. We both killed this one, except that you little gentleman, tried to sneak in and steal my damn Blake Snell pick. I'm like, you know who the hell Blake Snell. I'm going to come in here and like blindside you with that. This is going to be good. He goes, I want to go Blake Snell, man. I called you a jerk. I listened to the podcast again to make sure I had our picks right. My mom's looking at me and says, what are you doing? I said, I'm telling Furry he was a jerk for stealing my pick.
Well, the fact of the matter is that I looked through the American League Cy Young candidates, and I went back and forth, and then I decided, you know what? The Baseball Writers Association is going to choose the guy who has 20 or more games won. And we talked about this on the show. I said that Jacob deGrom needs to win the Cy Young, but if he doesn't, it's going to be because he didn't win 20 games. And this is where I think the baseball writers pulled their heads out of their butt. Finally. But it's a funny juxtaposition to look at. Now, you take the win-loss column out of both of them, they still are both the clear front runners. With Blake Snell's 1.89 ERA, something we don't see a whole lot in the American League because the American League pitchers don't get that 9-spot free.
Yeah, the auto out.
Right. So we don't see a 1.89 very often in the American League, but his 1.89 ERA over 31 games, 180 innings pitched is kind of where he falls down there in 31 games. That means he didn't go very deep.
170. He pitched 169 flat. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm looking at his
180.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm looking at his voting points. They list him just like an ERA or an innings number, like 169.1. Like what?
Right.
Oh yeah. I continue.
So 180 and 2/3 pitched, but 11 strikeouts per 9. Less than 1 home run per 9. These are all, even when you get into the advanced metrics of ERA plus at 2.19, these are numbers that indicate the winner of a Cy Young Award, and they're not far off, really, from Jacob deGrom's insane numbers.
Right.
You take away the win-loss record, and these two guys look identical almost. 11.2 strikeouts per 9, a home runs per 9 of 0.4, and an ERA plus of 2.16. But Jacob deGrom did it in 217 innings with a 1.7 ERA. That is monster numbers. That is insane.
Right.
And regardless of the win-loss column at 10 and 9 and that near 500, the 526 win-loss percentage that deGrom had, if you go back, I think it was you that told me that if he had gotten 4 runs in support in each of his start, or 2 runs in support,
he'd have had something like 5 or 6 more wins. And
if he had gotten 3, he would have went like 30 and 2 or something like that.
Right.
If he had gotten 3 or more runs in support in his starts, he would have had 30-something wins. That is ridiculous.
Well, but you mentioned this with Snell, and it's why it was the tightest race of all of them. I mean, even Manager of the Year, Snitker and Craig Counsell, there was a 17-point difference between the two. The closest voting out of all of these was Snell and Verlander, where there was a 15-point difference. And Verlander, man, it's 214 innings. I mean, when you're pitching 34, 35 more innings than the guy prior. So obviously, at that point, he's playing in 3 more games, but going deeper in the games that he's in. Your ERA is 2.52. You give up 63 total runs, 60 earned runs, 156 hits. I think you can expect that to be a little bit ballooned. But here's what gets me: Snell walked 64 and struck out 221. Verlander walked 37, struck out 290. It's just there were so many different numbers you can look at to try and figure out, which guy you think is the best.
What about Max Scherzer? Max Scherzer went 220 innings,
right,
with 2.53 ERA. The guy walked 51, struck out 300.
But again, that's where you get where deGrom strikes out. deGrom walks 46 and strikes out 269. So I think that the hard thing there is that the numbers were at least kind of accurate, whereas Snell's would have likely ballooned had he pitched more innings, and that's where I think guys have a harder time with it. It's why someone like Joshua Leclerc who was, man, he was great. A bunch of times on things we posted, he was commenting, and he kind of gave us a couple on everything. And I'm going to go ahead and go all the way. So first thing he said, that he thinks that they missed on Verlander, Kevin Cash, and Andujar. He didn't like that Ohtani missed half a season, won Rookie of the Year. Josh, we agreed. Cash went over 90 games with that roster with a never-before-seen pitching strategy. Hates the idea of the strategy, but it works. Exactly, and I think that's a good point. He thought that with Verlander's strikeouts and innings advantage, they were ignored in favor of a guy with the lowest innings total for a winner in a non-shortened season. That is a really, really good stat there. I'll say it again. This was a lowest innings total for a Cy Young winner in a non-shortened Major League Baseball season. Did not crack 200 innings. Josh, great point. Thanks for listening. Thanks for following the page Out of Left Field, Chris and Graham on Facebook. Flipping this around, though, Kurt Stewart, he can't say either DeGrom or Snell undeserving, what still blows his mind. DeGrom only won 10 games and won. Kurt, I get that, and as I mentioned to you, I think the big piece there is really what DeGrom was able to do and what he could have done even more. That's when you have to look kind of beyond just the face value. This I liked. Andrew Godfrey and Bruce Sarte, we all kind of got back and forth a little bit, and I know you were, I think, in the middle of getting ready for Thanksgiving at school and everything, so you didn't get a chance to chime in. But Andrew said, in jest, but might be time to have Cy Young Award for most wins and the Ed Walsh Award for the lowest ERA. He felt Scherzer's being penalized because his team scored enough runs to win more games. And DeGrom's ERA was below it wasn't the basement. It was the slab the basement sits on, right? Like it was below that. To have two guys with sub-2 ERAs and one of them pitched the number of innings like a starter should with DeGrom, easily the most dominant pitcher of the year. And Andrew he said, it feels like wins just don't mean anything. But again,
but they don't.
Well, they do, but I think this is a year. See, I disagree. Wins still mean something, but it was so easy to see this year that the best pitcher, unequivocally the best pitcher this year, played for a team that could not give him run support, and the win total did not tell the entire story of DeGrom's dominance. I don't think this is going to be a precedent type thing where we see this consistently, but I do think it was done right this year. And then Bruce Sarte came in and said Scherzer had a Cy Young season. DeGrom's was just better. Not by much, but just a tick better overall. It's tough for Scherzer, has the best season of his career and didn't win another Cy Young. And Bruce, that is, I think, where we sit. It was just better, and I don't think we're going to see this issue where DeGrom, we're going to have guys being sub 500 or barely cracking, 10 wins, winning Cy Youngs every year.
Well, he's his second best season of his career. Last year's Cy Young season was the best season of his career. But I think that ERA-wise anyway,
I got you.
Overall, the numbers are better from last year with the exception of the number of strikeouts and the number of innings pitched. So if you extrapolate the number of innings pitched to the number of strikeouts last year, it would have been probably over 300 because he pitched 20 fewer innings. And at 12 strikeouts per 9, he's going to get there. But anyway, I digress. My only issue is that the reason I say that win-losses don't mean anything or shouldn't mean anything is because it's the one number that the pitcher has no control over, as we saw with Jacob deGrom.
Minimal control. He still has control.
He has control to the point that if he does poorly, he's going to lose. But Jacob deGrom lost 9 games in which he gave up no runs, no earned runs. He lost games in which he had zero control over whether his team score, and he pitched the same number of games. Jacob deGrom pitched in 32 games and got only 19 decisions.
Sure.
Gave up a total of 48 runs.
And that's why I say the win total didn't tell the whole story with DeGrom.
It doesn't tell any story. It tells zero story. You have to delete that column from this year's voting. You have to. You can't say that Scherzer's being penalized because he's not. Because he gave up more runs. DeGrom is unequivocally the better pitcher this year.
I get that, but if this was a team that only could get 1 run of support or 2 runs of support, and then he was shutting down all these teams, man, look at what he did. His team got these wins because he was able to shut them down. So wins do still matter. It is a column that is still important. My point is here, just because DeGrom didn't have the highest win total of all prospective Cy Young winners, that didn't tell the whole story of this year. We're saying the same thing. We're just arguing over the semantics and the way that it's being, I think, emphasized. Let's go through the top 5 of each Cy Young. Blake Snell, number 1. Justin Verlander finished 2nd. Corey Kluber, 3rd. Chris Sale, followed by Garrett Cole. In the National League, a runaway Jacob DeGrom, Max Scherzer, Aaron Nola, Kyle Freeland, and Patrick Corbin, likely going to be a New York Yankee this year, or at least be highly coveted by the Bronx Bombers. So there you have it, guys. That is where we sit as we finish out. So, again, Acuna Jr. and Shohei Ohtani, your Rookies of the Year, Brian Snitker and Bob Melvin, the Managers of the Year, Blake Snell, Jacob DeGrom, your Cy Young winners, and Mookie Betts, Christian Yelich, the 2018 Most Valuable Players. Overall, it was a really enjoyable season of baseball. Had some times where, you know what, it would have been. I think there were moments where we both were kind of like, okay, the season's pretty much done. Let's get to the playoffs. But there were some great storylines. It's going to be even better. There's going to be a ton of stuff to get to as the offseason progresses. Obviously, winter meetings are just around the corner, and a lot of conversation is going to happen. We'll see. Do we get trades? I mean, hell, we remember last year we expected JD Martinez to kind of get the ball rolling on free agency, and it took almost all the way through spring training for him to finally find a home. Does free agency get just as crazy as last year? Don't worry, we're going to be here to bring it to you all throughout the end of this year into 2019.
There's some big names in free agency this year, and it's going to be very interesting.
Yep, I think I'm really curious to see who the first one to drop is, and I'm really interested to see how long it takes before Bryce Harper and Machado find a home. And I'm sure those are guys we're going to talk about. Of course, as we start to round out November into December, we'll start looking at our team breakdowns once we kind of begin to get an idea of where they're going to be, and we will let you guys know what we think they need to do to get better. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We missed you guys on vacation. It's great to be back. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Thank you to all of the listeners who chimed in, sent us comments. We're going to try and get stuff out to you guys every week to get some responses back, and we'll shout you all out on the show. Again, we appreciate Frank Scaduto, Leopold Stotch, Greg Pascal, Steve Teixeira, Christian Stein, Andrew Godfrey, Bruce Sarte, Kurt Stewart, Jim Charbonneau, and Joshua Leclerc. All guys, thank you so much for going ahead and chiming in on there with us and giving us some good stuff to talk about on the show. For everyone at the Grueling Truth Network, for Chris, I'm Graham. Thanks for hanging out, guys. See you next week on Out of Left Field.